Let's begin at an unusual place for a lens review, its personality. Today your camera gear also reflects your style and personality because it somehow reflects your sense of aesthetics. What gear you use can make you appear a certain type in the crowd. I feel this is not often talked about, but it's real. When I look at this lens, in fact, like many of the lenses in the Z lens lineup, it feels so no nonsense. It means business, sleek and mean. It's got that high tech feel to it, like some equipment for Neo from the Matrix, or is this made for Batman? I think that's more like it. This is Bat gear. But I won't lie, there have been many times when I thought that the Z lenses all look a bit phallic. It's light at 370 grams because it's made for someone active, someone who loves to carry a camera for a long time and really likes spending time shooting. A traveler who wants to capture what he sees with a sense of location and space with this beautiful wide angle lens. There's an AF/MF switch, but Nikon lenses turn manual the moment you turn the focus ring, and you won't have to look for it. It's really handy in tricky situations like when you're shooting through a glass or a window, or when the light is too low, or even when the camera focuses on the wrong person in a group photo. All you need is a slight tweak to the focus ring. Since we are talking about personality here, I must say that the lens has a couple of quirks. It vignettes, and in fact I quite like this quirk actually. Here you can see a kind of heavy vignetting at f1.8. At f2.8 the darkness still exists, but it's much less. It's quite evenly lit as the aperture closes down to f4, and at f5.6 it continues the good work. But I'm going to shoot wide open all the time and use the dark force of vignetting to my advantage. I like that. Second thing is that it can distort faces to some extent. It has a bit of distortion, but it looks natural. You won't have to change your shooting style to avoid that distortion or anything like that. It's quite normal for wide angle lenses to have a bit of distortion since they really allow you to come closer than normal lenses or telephoto lenses. And of course you can switch the internal in-camera distortion control on, and that will take care of it. Talking about coming closer, wide angle lenses can actually evoke a sense of intimacy. Without words or articulation, they can leave with an impression of a story, if not some stories themselves. 35mm lenses have always brought the best out of creators. That's because they really allow you to get close and reach further into the richer intricacies of a story. That's why it's very good to see that this lens has a minimum focus distance of about 25 centimeters. You can pause at this chart if you want to. Now let me take you through some technical gibberish that actually may not mean anything to you. It's got 11 elements in 9 groups, including 2 ED glasses and 3 aspherical lens elements, and the maximum aperture is f16. Talking about numbers, do help me reach 1000 subscribers and subscribe, and while at it, do press the bell icon as well. For more specs and details of the lens, here's a chart again. Pause this frame if you need to. Now after those mechanical features and details, let's have a look at the most organic and the most crucial way to judge a lens. No, it's not sharpness. We should officially stop testing Z lenses for sharpness. I really mean that, because the Z lenses are all so sharp that they can make the pores on a beautiful girl's skin look like craters. Now, I think the most important criteria is the bokeh. And here the bokeh balls test with LED lights for you. We are using the f-mount 50mm 1.8G lens for a point of comparison because that's one of the most widely used lenses in the entire Nikon system. You'll see that the Z lens has got lovely balls, wonderfully round and symmetrical, thanks to the 9 rounded blades that the lens has. The 35mm has some cat's eye shaped bokeh at the corners, but they don't really disturb you, they're not ugly. But on the other hand, on the 50mm lens, you quickly start seeing those heptagonal bokeh balls pretty quickly, but it is only at f4 that you see any sharpness ruining the creamy perfection of the Z35mm lens. Now let's see how it renders busy backgrounds. Let's see how those leafy, greeny and busy backgrounds are rendered. There is a smoothness to it that I quite like. The quality of blur is smooth, though I have seen smoother honestly. But just to show you how this slightly expensive prime achieves Look at this comparison. The affordable 50mm f-mount lens, which I quite like in fact, creates this nervous, edgy, sharp sort of background blur, but the Z lens has, despite being a wider lens with a much deeper depth of field, is actually able to create more of a 3D look with that beautiful creamy background. That's because how smoothly it renders the blurs. Really nice because of those rounded apertures and those 9 blade aperture. Really nice. Now let's see if this lens is going to make your life extra colorful. Well, we'll see that the 50mm 1.8G lens, the f-mount lens again, as a base for these tests. All settings and lighting situations are exactly the same. Overall, the 35mm S lens produces quite natural and neutral colors. Not too cool or not too warm. The images are shot on the Z6 II for your reference with 5600 Kelvin. Overall, the Nifty 50 seems to produce deeper colors, but that's actually down to the 35mm S lens, a Z-mount lens, having a higher light. The 35mm lens, the image coming out of the 35mm lens seems to have slightly more exposure. Although the exposure settings were identical, but the Z lens seems still brighter overall, which is a pretty good thing. Now, before we look at autofocus, let us have a look at the nature or character of the glare. Not flare, but glare. I actually really like a bit of glare, especially for those backlit portraits. I call it the magical flaw in a lens because it can create that special look, or maybe I have a weird preference. But the Z35mm lens is awesome in this regard. See how it creates a glow on both sides of a head, but without, and this is the key, without losing too much contrast. The balance is awesome, and it's this kind of control of the glare that allows one to use this glare creatively without ruining the picture. And remember, I'm not using the lens hood here. Now, if you look at the standard f-mount 50mm for this test, look how it reduces contrast. For sunset portraits, that's going to kill off a lot of color and contrast. But hey, maybe that's your style, maybe you're going to like that. But I personally like how the Z lens implements it, because in that kind of backlit portraits, you can hit the model with a flash from the front and have a contrasty look while getting that soft but defined glare from the background light, which is really dramatic. This gives the lens so much character in my view. Let us get to the more soulless part of the lens now. Let us talk about autofocus. No, it doesn't grunt or moan, not at all. It's almost near silent and perfect for video. The autofocus speed is quite nice for photography. It's quite snappy and sure-footed. It focuses smoothly and silently. You can see that it does well to grab the green wall in the background despite it being quite low contrast. Now, if we do the same test for the 50mm f-mount 50mm 1.8G lens, we see how the lens kind of sort of hunts more, goes back and forth before locking on. Overall, good autofocus, solid autofocus performance so far. Now to the video autofocus test. In video mode, the lens performs excellently. It never really missed focusing, performing equally well on both the Z6, the first generation Z6 and the Z6 II. Tracks the subject confidently on both the bodies, the Z6 and the Z6 II. The lens can detect a moving subject and smoothly track it. Let's have a look. And you get a similar performance in an overexposed and backlit scenario as well. Very confident and very smooth. Now let's see whether the video focus transition is smooth or not. This is very important for video shooters. I set the AF speed to 0 in the settings and the tracking speed to 3. I realized I found that this setting really works for the Z cameras. It really gives you smooth transitions if you fix it to these settings. The transition is not too quick, but quite slow and smooth and gradual. Honestly, quite a cinematic thing in my view. This lens can really make you a filmmaker with a Z body. Also, the 35mm focal length is just right for storytelling. Compare that to the f-mount lens. The focus shifts here are sort of jumpy and abrupt. Just that alone makes the look amateurish, in my view. When it's backlit, the focus transition is a bit slower for the Z lens. That tells me one interesting thing. It tells me that when the camera struggles a bit in video autofocus, instead of hunting, it just takes a bit more time and moves smoothly. Remember that this test was done on Z6, not on the Z6 II. What I particularly like about this lens coupled with the Z bodies is how cinematic the transitions are. It makes the videos look natural with no distracting sudden movements at all. Now the f-mount lens is stuck here. It did well the first time, but after that it just stopped and refused to move. After all this, the most important question for us is, should you buy this lens? No, do not buy this lens if you don't have any other Z lens. Get the 50mm first because that's a more versatile lens and overall a better lens. Do not buy this lens if you want to buy the best Z prime. Don't buy it, it's got a bit of chromatic aberration and whatnot. You might expect perfection from Z lenses, and if this is the lens where you are expecting that sort of perfection, this lens is not that. If you only shoot portraits and don't at least have a 50mm lens, don't buy it. Get the Z mount 50mm first. Again, it's also the cheapest Z lens apart from being one of the very best in the lineup. It is in fact arguably the best f1.8 prime lens in the lineup so far. Now if you want the lightest street lens for street photography and general travel photography, wait for the Z 40mm f2. Let's see how that turns out to be. This is June 2021. If June 2021 is way past your present now, then you know which one to get, and I probably already have a review of that 40mm out, so go and check that. If you're thinking if you should subscribe or not, just go ahead and subscribe right now and help me reach 1000 subscribers. Please do it, it's free. Now buy it, and I emphatically say this: get this lens if you have at least one Z prime. Buy it if you need a nice light street photography or travel lens right now. Buy it if you shoot video and if you're a bit space constrained. It's a great video lens for small spaces or stories that need expanse. Well, all stories need expanse and all stories need space. Buy it for its beautiful neutral natural colors, for its personality, for its no-nonsense design, and for its smooth operation for both video and stills. It can become a long-term, lightweight, smart travel companion. It's nicely weather sealed at 7 points, including under the AF/MF switch. Overall, this is a thoughtfully made, thoughtfully designed lens for a wide variety of usage. And if you buy this, you're going to keep this for a long time. Please subscribe, stay safe, see you soon.